Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the latest installment of the Fourth Folio Shakespeare Series. I am one of your hosts. My name is Rodney Hakim, and I am the voice behind the New York Shakespeare social media feeds on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And tonight I am joined, as always, by my colleague, Jay Michaels. Jay Michaels and I have a long history, and we actually did the Fourth Folio Series on stages when people were actually still doing performances on stages back in the day, way back in the good old days. And we did the Fourth Folio Series around New York, in which we took the different plays of Shakespeare, the 36 canonical plays of Shakespeare, plus many of the apocryphal plays. And we gave those plays a life on stage. We gave them a staging. And then we asked the audience after the play, we discussed the themes of the play. We discussed some of the questions posed by those plays. And one of Jay's favorite questions is, who wrote the play? Do we believe that it was really Shakespeare that was the writer behind these masterful works, or was it some other hand? Was it a collaboration with Shakespeare and another writer of his era? Was it another writer under the guise of Shakespeare, or any other variation on this theme? Tonight, we will be discussing Othello. It seems to be the season of Othello here in New York, where we're all located tonight. And we have one of the people that's been contributing to that presentation of the Othello discussion here in New York, and that is Keith Hamilton Cobb. He's our other guest. And Keith is the writer and star of the play American Moor. Keith, I'm happy to have you join us tonight.
Thank you.
Welcome, glad you're here.
All right, so Jay, why don't you give us a quick update about you, yourself, and all the different things that you're up to in the world of Shakespeare before we get rolling on Othello.
A million years ago, I found a book in an old bookstore. It was from 1855, and it was a Shakespeare book, and I have a collection. My oldest is 1792, a copy of Merchant of Venice, and I thought this would be wonderful for my collection. And when I opened it up, it was called Shakespeare's Apocryphal Works. And this is long ago enough that I said, his apocryphal works, and it opened up my mind in so many ways to the Shakespeare conspiracy, to how Shakespeare wrote his plays, to how plays were written back in the time of the Renaissance. And in, Rodney, correct me if I'm wrong, it was about 2002 or so, the beginning of this century. I had a series called the Fourth Folio, where, as Rodney pointed out, we would read the plays, whether they were truly of Shakespeare or one of the apocryphal works or something in between, and we would invite the audience and the actors to make their decision. I was thrilled to work with Rodney on that. I consider him a true Shakespeare scholar, and so now when we have this opportunity via Zoom to have other scholars chat with us about the Bard and his works, it became a perfect opportunity. And here comes another one now.
Here is our other guest for the evening, Debra Ann Byrd. Debra, how are you? Can you hear us, Debra?
She is her audio is recording. Is starting. I think
up. She's still connecting. Hello, Debra.
There you go.
Hello.
How are you?
How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. We're just doing our introductions, and we were talking to my co-host Jay Michaels. He's telling us about his path in getting into the current Fourth Folio series that we've embarked on.
Yes.
And we also have our other guest for this evening, and that is Keith Hamilton Cobb of American Moor.
Hi,
Debra,
Keith.
Hi.
Debra, your timing is perfect because I need things to make me stop talking, and your entrance just did. So welcome aboard. I look forward to hearing both of your takes on Othello. It's one of the plays I'm more curious about than anything, and so I'd love to hear what you both think of this great work.
So before Debra came on, I was just doing a quick talk up, and I was mentioning how it seems like in the New York scene, we're all in New York, or at least all originally based in New York. It seems like it's the season of Othello right now. A lot of the companies are putting on productions of Othello, and each of our two special guests tonight, Keith and Debra, both have their own versions of Othello, their own riffs on the theme that they have been presenting around town. Keith, we mentioned, is the writer and star of American Moor, which is a kind of an autobiographical take on his version of Othello. And Debra is, in many ways, is coming to it with a similar approach. She is the writer and star of Becoming Othello, in which she takes on the role of Othello as a female performer. And she's also the founder of the Harlem Shakespeare Festival. And I think you've done Othello with the Harlem Shakespeare Festival before, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Absolutely.
Okay, all right. So before we kind of get rolling into the actual text of Othello and some of the challenges of that text, I know Keith affectionately, or perhaps not so affectionately, refers to Othello as a dog of a play, and he's not such a big fan. But you both seem to have done quite a bit of research and some background work. Debra, I think you studied in Stratford upon Avon and did quite a bit of research over there.
Yes, that's correct. I was at writer in residence at the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust for about 5 weeks in 2017. Yes.
Okay, and then what was your journey from that time when you were doing your studies then to your current tour of becoming Othello?
Well, I specifically went to Stratford upon Avon to become the writer in residence because I knew that I wanted to write a solo show, and I also knew I wanted to write a memoir. And because my Othello story has to do with some of my life experiences, as well as my experience playing Othello or preparing for the role of Othello, I knew that I was going to, that memoir I've been wanting to write all my life was finally going to come to fruition. So when I went to the Birthplace Trust, of course, I wanted to learn about all the Othellos that there have ever been that I could find. I wanted to see who would dare take that role on, because the role is really a challenge. It's really, really, really difficult to play him. And so I wanted to see who was it that played him. And so I've traced back to 1700s, 1600s, as far as back as I could go. I wanted to see who those people were. And so I got the British version of that, along with thoughts about Othello, scholarship about Othello, and then I said, well, I would like the American version of that. And so I applied for the Folger, Folger Shakespeare, and got a fellowship at the Folger for 2 months. And that's where I found the female Othello, females playing Othello at the Folger.
And I was just doing some research today. I was something that I came across is that the first female performer in Othello, not to play Othello himself, but to play even one of the characters, to play Desdemona, was, I believe, in about 1660. And that was just when the tradition of the young men or even young boys playing the female characters was dying out, and females were just starting to gain that social or cultural acceptance to begin to perform on stage. So who was the first the female to actually play the role of Othello?
I'm not telling because it's in the book. Is that how you do it, Keith?
Always leaving wanting more. That's right.
You say, wait, it's in the book. You gotta read the book. Well, I found her, and I found at least, I want to say, 15 women who have played Othello.
That's amazing.
So I'm working on delivering that list to the Folger. And was sharing with the world. My memoir is probably going to be called Lady Othello. This is why I can't give her name up, because if I give her name up, then you know scholars, they would snatch it up. So she does exist. She played a lot of other pants roles, or as it was called back in the day, she was an impersonatrix. And so some of these women played male roles in Europe and in America. And so we'll expound upon that.
I will not say it out loud, but something tells me I know who the first female.
You better not.
I'm not going to say a word. But listening to what you're saying, I'm like, wait a minute. So I think I may know.
Thank you, Jay.
Anytime.
How about yourself, Keith? What was your journey of getting into the role of Othello? You're so deeply enmeshed in it now. What was your entry point into getting involved in this play?
Well, you know, Rodney, I don't know how deeply enmeshed I am. I mean, I think I've always been trying to be unenmeshed, and studying classical theater and being large and black and male, you get, Othello gets dumped on you, you know, from the time you're old enough, before you're old enough to play the role. You know? And so my world of thought around Othello stems directly from having it, you know, I had rather been thinking about Hamlet, and rather been thinking about Romeo, rather than thinking about, I said, but Othello, if not Othello, how about Aaron the Moor, you know? And so there's that discussion. The work I have, I mean, I think that I have to defer to Debra, because she's thrown down with this. I've never played this role. I don't know that I'd be good at it. I don't know that I would like to play the role. And the work that I've done, piece that I wrote, and the work that I do with this on stage is really about my experience having to deal with the fact that this character exists, you know, and impinges upon my life as an actor who wants to do any number of things. Because, Othello, you know.
That's what you just said in that couple of minutes. I think that encapsulates the whole thrust of your play. It's that you have this lifelong challenge where people only assume that you're pigeonholed into the role of Othello, and you want to play all of Shakespeare except Othello. So it's this constant struggle that you have.
I'm so thrilled you said that. I was trying to think of a charming way of saying, are you the victim of the stereotype? The moment you say, oh, I've done Shakespeare. Oh, have you done Othello? In my younger days, they would look at me in my nose and they would say, oh, when did you play Shylock? And I'm like, okay, thank you. I was also in Hamlet, but that didn't seem to matter. You said something very interesting, and I'm thrilled to hear it. Why is it a dog of a play?
Well, for me, you know, I just don't think that the arc of the eponymous hero is credible. I think it depends upon all sorts of lacunae in the plot. The characters in Othello tend to behave in ways that we'd see characters behaving in a bad horror movie. They do things to advance the plot, and not because it's really quite what humans do. This is my sense of it. And I don't see that as much in any other of the plays in the canon. I think there seemed to be there was a feeling of haste with this play, like it was written quickly, and there was a rush to get to the end, for it to start in one place and end at another that was very, very defined from the beginning. So everything had to be sort of forced to fit into that. So you have characters doing things. You have a villain who has been touted as this one of the most fascinating and nuanced and incredible villains, and he's not. He's not at all. His stuff works because the human beings around him behave and are gullible, or do things and don't, yes. they don't see the piggishness and the illness that is very clear to me, but keep calling him honest and good, and he very seldom ever looks like it. That in a nutshell. I have not seen a production of the play in my life, and as I say, with Othello in the Ether, I have seen production after production, that I get to the end believing in that journey, and I'm angry at the audience for buying into it, for coming and believing it because it's facile. You know, to watch the animal crash and burn is cheap and does him no justice. And I think it's a metaphor for how the culture looks at blackness. You know, it doesn't. They don't want to be challenged by it. They don't want to see black nuance. They don't want to see black intellect. They want to see this crashing and burning because it's easy. It fits into the archetype.
Do you think, and I'm asking you both this because it fascinated me, because I've often read that Iago is just this evil guy, that except for the line where he says, "I hate the Moor," do we really understand why he's so vitriol at this point? Do you think this was on purpose? Do you think it's Shakespeare, whomever he may be, is this production scheme of let's make these gullible people, let's make this evil person circle around this valiant soldier? Do you think it was on purpose, or do you think, like you're saying, that it might not be a well-written play?
Deborah, would you like to speak?
Well, I'm thinking, it's not a story that Shakespeare made up himself. Didn't he borrow it from an Italian guy?
Right. So the main story of Othello is actually derived from a couple of different previous stories that have the same tropes. One is from an Italian writer who wrote the play in, I think it was the 1560s. And that was, it was called Un Capitano Muro or something like that. It was basically a Moorish captain in Italian, and that itself was derived from the ancient Arabian stories of the 1001 Nights. One of the stories from that collective.
Okay.
So it's an old trope that's, and another one that is derived from that same source is Measure for Measure. So it's an old trope that's derived from a previous source, and then Shakespeare takes it and expands on it and adds some things that aren't in the previous versions. I think something I was reading about that the Italian version that is based on does differently than Shakespeare version is the way that Desdemona meets her demise.
Right.
In Shakespeare's Othello, in a very powerful scene suffocates Desdemona with a pillow, with their marital pillow, and that is her tragic end. But in the original that it's sourced from, it's much more, Jay, you would appreciate this, it's much more blood and guts, because not only is she, I forget what it is, I think she stabbed first or something like that, and then they take a club and they bash her head until her skull is broken, and then they set the bed on fire, and then they make the ceiling collapse so that the ceiling rafters fall on her, and then they blame the faulty ceiling for falling on her for her murder. It's not that they did anything; it's that the poor construction, faulty construction. So it's a whole series of things.
I'm so glad you said that. I find that many times that the plays prior to Shakespeare are so much bloodier. The one that you and I did, the Spanish tragedy,
right,
which somewhat can be called Hamlet, if you look at it from a certain angle. Acid is thrown in one person's face, another person is hung, someone else, their head is cut off. You're watching an 80s horror film with that. So it's very interesting that Shakespeare actually gets tame.
Yeah, and you know, there is some of that in Shakespeare's canon. If you look at Titus Andronicus, there's plenty of that blood and guts and that open bloodletting. And I think that a lot of that is what was not just the cultural norm of the time that he's writing this in, but also it's what Shakespeare is doing to keep his audience engaged and to counteract what the competing forms of entertainment are, with the bear baiting, with the dog fights, and some of the other forms of public performance that rely very heavily on the blood and the guts and everything else. So the fact that Shakespeare deviates from that in his version of Othello, if you look at this period of time that Othello is written in, this is dated, according to different historians, it's dated around 1603 to 1604, depending who you ask. And that is right in the period where Shakespeare has his greatest fecundity, his greatest intellectual output, you might say, with Hamlet, Macbeth, Hamlet, King Lear, and some of the great tragedies. And this falls right in the middle of that period. So the fact that that he doesn't take you might say, the temptation to go into the blood and the guts and the gore and make it just kind of like if you look at the current day horror films, a lot of the horror films today will rely less on story advancement and more just on the visceral thrill of the blood and the guts and there's no real story to substantiate all that. It's just more just the shock value of all that blood and guts. And I think Shakespeare moves in the other direction. There is a fair share of violence, there's a fair share of gore, but it plays to the effect of adding to the actual things that are happening in the story.
Actually,
Indeed.
modern horror movies don't have that blood and gore anymore. It is the 80s, but that's for another program.
That's your specialty.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So we just a technical note. I had scheduled 2 consecutive Zoom meetings. We ran out of time. It looks like we're good. If for some reason our meeting cancels out, you can go into your email or your messages, and I've sent the information for the subsequent one. But we should be good to go.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. So
I want
go ahead,
to,
Debra.
if I may, I'd like to speak to some of what Keith said. I've heard this kind of argument for a long time, and it is one that has a lot of truth. That being, in olden days, and maybe even today, I'm not sure of what some producers do, but especially in olden days, a lot of the time, just looking at the scholarly photos that I found at the Birthplace Trust and at the Folger, you see a lot of these Othellos. Of course, they were in blackface, but some of them did blackface in a natural kind of way to make them look like they were tinted brown, and others put makeup on that made Othello look like a monster. And so it begs the question, are they looking like a monster because they're saying a black man looks like a monster, or because he is a monster, or because he is a savage and that's why he kills Desdemona? And in thinking about that, in collecting all of those photographs from across hundreds of years and looking at that closely, I began to think about what I heard Earl Hyman say, that if you're going to play Othello, then you need to play him nobly. You need to play him as a man who has any regular given circumstance. Maybe there's something going on with his wife. Any man, something going on with his wife is going to have a problem. So I've been thinking about that. I've been thinking about, how do I reclaim this black man's nobility? They say he's noble. They say he's flawed, but he's noble. So how do we play him nobly? When I first thought about playing Othello, it was not because I wanted to play a man, but because I saw an actor who was so brilliant at playing Othello that I said to myself, as an actor, I want to do that. And that actor was Charles Dutton. So to see Charles Dutton perform a monologue from Othello at John Barton's Playing Shakespeare workshop is the thing that made me say, oh my God, I want to say those words. I want to say them like that. And it was me, just as a young actor, knowing that women were beginning to play men's roles, that I decided that that's the one. Not because I knew Othello, not because I even really knew Shakespeare. I had my first semester of college. I mean, my first semester of my Shakespeare class. So I didn't really know Shakespeare at all, but I did know good acting when I saw it, and good words and use of words. And so that is the thing that made me say, oh my God, I want to play that role. And of course, 13 years later, it happened. But knowing that I was going to play him as a man with as much dignity and respect as possible. And I think it worked out, because I've played it several times now. And, you know, it seems it's a challenge every time, because the words are, and maybe I'm in a vacuum. I don't know. I haven't done all the scholarly work because I didn't care to do all the scholarly work. I was looking at the text and what he says and why he says it and why he flies off into these very flowery ways of speaking when he's very, very upset. He doesn't speak plainly like Iago. Iago's like, I hate the Moor. But Othello's like, methinks there should be a huge eclipse of sun and moon, and that the affrighted globe should yawn at alteration. That's not regular, normal, everyday speaking. So something's happening. So I use the text in a way to figure out what's happening to the man. as he begins to, as we say, spiral out of control? What is happening to him psychologically? What's happening to him mentally? Why would he do such a thing? Why would he behave such a way? Did he make the wrong choices? Absolutely. He made so many damn wrong choices. And so when I play him like a man who did make all the damn wrong choices. And in the end, he decided to just be gone because he made so many wrong choices. And do we forgive ourselves for making wrong choices? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. And so it's just interesting. It's been interesting looking at how humans behave. That's what I've been using it to do.
Right.
How do humans behave?
Yeah,
You bring up a really interesting point. Oh, I'm sorry, Rodney, go ahead.
No, don't go for it. Go for it.
You bring up a really interesting point, and I've always called it Shakespeare's clairvoyance or Shakespeare's apology. The monologue in The Merchant of Venice, and that's the reason I mentioned Shylock at one point, is this brilliant piece. If you look at Marlowe's The Jew of Malta and you look at Merchant of Venice, they are two different Jews. One is the villain that we expect, right, and one is that hath not a Jew hands, eyes, dimension, senses. It's almost saying the Jew is noble. Do you get the idea that maybe Shakespeare knew people's opinion? And I'd love to get a bigger grasp from both of you on what it meant to be a Moor back in that time period. But do you think Shakespeare knew people's opinion, if you will, and so he made Othello that much more noble and made Iago and the rest of the company that much not normal or not intelligent? Do you think he had to adjust it so that the audience could accept this Moor as this great nobleman?
I'm going to be right to you. I'm going to plug this in so it doesn't go off.
Keith, what's your take? For me, the angle I come to this with regarding is that my understanding when Shakespeare first wrote this play, the understanding of what a Moor was different than what we associate it with now.
Thank you.
Yes. It was originally more oriented towards people of a Middle Eastern background, or even North African Spanish descent. Whereas now, when we talk about Othello, the Moor is associated with more of a Black lineage. So where do you think that change occurred? And I don't know if that even matters, but the idea of the other, the foreign presence, and how that manifests itself as the usurper, the person who's not of the bloodline, the barbarian, so to speak, the outsider, who's coming in to take the virginal daughter of the king or whatever else. How do you think that manifests itself?
I don't have super strong responses and thus not super strong answers to questions like that, because it was too long ago for me to do anything but research. And the research is vast and varied. There is research that says anybody who wasn't white and Christian at that time in the early modern period could be pejoratively called a Moor.
Yes.
Jews could be called Moors. Everybody who wasn't white and Christian could be called Moors. It was just sort of a catch-all. We know that there were brown people around London, and anybody could see them. They were in the court. They were all about. What was on Shakespeare's mind doesn't really figure into what I have to do when some director hands me Othello and says, "You're the guy, go." Right? Because again, as Debra says, I have to figure out, and fairly quickly, if we're doing the American 3 weeks and you're on, I have to figure out what this man's humanity is.
Yes.
And that's a hell of a job for anybody who takes it on, whether they succeed or not, is a better man than I am, or woman.
I'm a girly dude.
I think we can get way into the weeds with what was on Shakespeare's mind. But once we get into the 21st century and somebody says we're doing Othello here in America, with Black people. You can go on and do it with Asian, Pacific Islanders, all sorts of brown people who aren't straight up African-esque, African descended. If you want to, it's not one of my favorite plays. I don't have to go. I don't have to contemplate that. Right? But if you're coming to me and saying this is a Black guy up here, if John Douglas Thompson is going to do it, I'm going to sit up there and watch John Douglas Thompson do what he's doing and judge him on that,
on his performance and not on his ethnic background.
Yeah.
Now, Debra, what you were saying before, you said something really interesting about how he's someone who's making all these bad decisions. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at it, because if you look at the beginning of the play, all the talk is about how Othello is making all the right decisions, and he's the one who has turned the tide of the battle, and he's helped them win the war, and he's helped them become this much stronger nation. He's protected them from loss. He's saved the Duke, and basically he's like a superhero in the flesh. And he's done everything right. He charmed Desdemona with all the stories of all the exploits of all the wonderful things he's done. So at what point is it that he goes from doing everything right and being such a superhero? What about Iago's turning the screws with Othello is it that makes him turn and do a 180 so quickly?
Well, I think that it starts even before Iago says a word. Before he says a mumbling word. If you listen to some of Othello texts, you hear him say that he sent Cassio to run interference for him so that he can see Desdemona when he needed to see her, because of course her father wasn't going to understand him showing up and talking about, can I see your daughter? That wasn't going to work out. And the fact that back in the day, if a man wanted to court a woman or he wanted to marry a woman, it was the honorable thing to do was to talk to her father about it, unless you were going to elope, or unless you were going to just steal her. So they decided to elope, both Desdemona and Othello. They both decided to do that without the father's permission. So that already started enough trouble. So Iago wasn't even in that. But the fact that he did marry her, and Iago just saw an opportunity. He knows the rules. He knows that you have to see daddy before you take up their daughters, especially if they're very rich, because the women's money was predicated on their fathers or their husbands. And so if he had no sons and he only had a daughter, then the money is going to go to her. And so you absolutely got to get permission, right? So now I am Desdemona's dad, and my daughter's gone missing, and she's with a man, but she's not just with a man. And you know what things were like back then. It's the same way that things are like now. You know, if someone told a regular white guy that their daughter ran off with a black man, the first thing is like, what? They start having a fit. And so Iago, of course, he's just telling him, you know, your daughter's with the monster. And so, of course, yeah, he's like, yeah, he's with the monster. Now you see Othello saying, her father, he loved me. I thought that was true. I did this and he did that and I did this. I talked to his daughter. I talked to him. I was at his house. I was always celebrated. We had a great time. And now he's saying that I'm a monster who did witchcraft. Since when he know me to do witchcraft? Why is he accusing me of that? He's upset, of course, because now his daughter in front of everyone has said, hey, I'm going to with him. I love you, Dad, but like you left with my mom, I'm leaving with this man. And Dad was not okay with that. And so already the whole thing is a damn mess. Just on that part alone. And then when it gets to, of course, Iago's gonna see an end, and he took it. He just was crazy. I was gonna cuss. He was a crazy mug. You know, I mean, according to what I see written on the page, he was a crazy mug who just decided that he wanted what he wanted, and he wanted it how he wanted it when he wanted it. And he found a way to manipulate everyone around.
Would you say it's a fair assessment that Iago does what he does because of some feeling that Othello was advanced ahead of him unjustly, or that he took the position that Iago was striving all these years for but could never earn? Or is it something deeper? Is it something more of the sexual jealousy, of the fear of being cuckolded, or something like that? What is the basis
There's
of
a lot of
Iago's resentment?
there's a lot of thoughts about that flying around that I've heard over the years. I mean, I've heard all kinds of things. I heard that he's upset because he thinks that Iago thinks that Othello might have been with his wife. He's upset because Cassio was got the job over him. He's upset because he's Othello's right hand for so long, being his ensign, and now all of a sudden this guy who's not even a real soldier is showing up and get the rank that he thought that he deserved. You know, just plain if a man thinks that someone has been with his wife is already enough of a problem, right? So whether that's true or not, we don't know. Does he really think Desdemona is beautiful and he said, I'd like to have her? Is he jealous about that? Is he man jealous because sometimes, you're soldiers together, you're hanging out, you guys it's just mano a mano all the time, and now there's going to be a damn woman in the space who's going to ruin our relationship? Because when guys fall in love, when girls fall in love, when we fall in love, when all of us fall in love, we act a damn fool. And so if you can imagine, what's going to happen to your relationship. Is he upset about the relationship, Iago, that Desdemona is going to have with Othello? Is he upset that he lost his position? Is he upset that maybe Othello slept with his wife? It just sounds like the damn man is upset and can't be happy. Now, there's a lot of people like that in the world who are mental that way, who don't know how to choose happiness.
Listening to you, I really get an idea that this is, and you bring up a very interesting point when we talk about when did Othello do wrong, if you will. And you're absolutely right. It's about at the beginning with her father, and it's the perfect parable of racism. Oh, you do whatever you want. You're fine. I accept you over there. Don't come into my house.
Yeah.
And so if we just take that whole beginning sequence, yes, this is really a very clever parable of racism, because then all of it is why is this man with this woman? I've always wondered about the handkerchief with the strawberries on it, the significance of the strawberry.
That's mama's handkerchief. Don't mess with that.
I understand that. But the notion of the strawberry, there's a very sexual reference within that.
Right.
So you get the jealousies and everything, but I'm wondering if it's jealousy or if it's, why are you with that woman? Why do you have that position? Why are you allowed to do these things? I get the real racist out of Iago. If I go to movie versions, Kenneth Branagh, who I thought was probably the definitive Iago, he played it like he really.
You mean with Lawrence Fishburne?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
He really played it like he was this racist character. He wasn't seething about it, he didn't say anything, but just his hatred seemed to have no, I'm hating you because of this. It just became the way he said it, and that's why I remember the line so well. He looked right into the camera and he goes, I hate the Moor. And it really made me think, okay, yeah, this is what it is. It's racism. It's Shakespeare's or whomever's version of racism.
It could be that too. It could be all of that.
Here's an interpretation that I read somewhere that was a new one for me, and I'll throw it out there. See how you feel about this. The overt idea in the text is that Iago feels that he's being made a cuckold by Othello. That Othello is sleeping with his wife Amelia, but there's some suggestion that there's also a latent homosexual strain between the two of them. Not that there's that relationship, but that on some level, Iago wants that relationship with Othello and feels cuckolded, that he's has that bond with Othello taken away from him by Cassio, by whomever else that might be. Have you explored that? You did your version of Othello with the National Arts Club was an all-female. Did you have any of that vibe in that production?
No, from the first time we played, I decided to play with, actually do the part. It was with Lisa Volpe of the Los Angeles Women Shakespeare Company. And I asked her straight up, I said, when we do this stage reading of Othello, am I going to be a woman general or a man general? I was open to either. And she said to me at the time, this is a man's story. And so I said, okay, then I'm gonna have to find my inner dude. You know, how else am I going to play this man if I don't try and understand what that is, what that means, what that's like. And so I began to, and my actor self, I just began to explore, right? What happens when my voice is lower? What happens when I move a certain way? What happens when I'm not so floppy and sloppy? What happens when I'm more brave and strong? What happens when I'm more just pulling those parts of yourself that's already there, enhancing them, and the parts of myself that was more feminine, just tapering those down. No eyelashes, no lipstick, no makeup. And so in rehearsal process, when we decided that the male characters would be male and the female characters will be female, we just did just that. How do you do that? How do you make that work? We didn't think about we weren't thinking about we thought about gender. We were not thinking about sexuality. We were not thinking about somebody loving somebody who's male, women and women and men and men. We weren't thinking about that at all. We were thinking about the reverse of what Shakespeare's companies did back in the day when they had all men playing the roles. Was that about men being with women, men being with men, or was that just about actors doing their job? And so we were just actors doing our job. And for me, I wanted to not only master the language and the words, but how can I be believable on stage as a male general who's the leader of a troop of men, respected in his community, respected as someone who has done all of these superhuman things, what you practice to become good at. If he's a soldier, he's one of the absolute best. How do I portray that and be believable was my feat, was the thing that I was after as an actor. And so we just did that. That's what our focus was. We didn't focus on anything other than being the best actor possible and being taken seriously, because a lot of women playing men's roles are not taken seriously. And so we wanted to see, how can you be so excellent at your Shakespeare that folks will take you seriously and you can be believable and people understand the story and people get it, and people see the story differently than they've ever seen it before. And that happened.
That's a great way to approach it. Keith, I'm going to throw something at you and your assessment of the play and the problems with the text. And I think one of the things that that is kind of universally people have a challenge with is how we deal with the resolution of the play, where at the end, we have the tragedy where all the heroes have died, but usually at the end, the evil character, the antagonist, has to come to justice somehow. And at the end, yes, Iago, his plot is revealed, he's captured, but he goes silent. He doesn't confess to his heinous crimes. He doesn't. There's no absolution of him, and there's no. He's not killed. He's just kind of held. What do you make of the ending with Iago?
Again, Rodney, I don't know what I make of it. I don't think it's real any more than I think anything else is real. I think that somebody in that room would be giving Iago a tough time. That he gets hauled off and tortured is not particularly satisfying to anybody. Mm-hmm. That we never know what his issue actually was is not satisfying, and in fact, I think as part of following the story in a way that, again, gives the Othello some sense of dignity, we need to know. We need to know from the beginning. We need to create backstory and get very specific about what Iago's up to and why, what makes him the person he is. We need to do that with all the characters in the play, so that we're following the trajectory of this confluence of souls moving forward in a way that we all can identify and understand. You know, Jay had mentioned that it would the play takes some of the violence out of it, that we don't get to see as much of that. But I think that, again, if you're talking about a warrior culture, a warring culture in a time of war, and a warrior who has lived his life from the time he was however many years old, he's got a serious case of PTSD.
Absolutely.
And we're going to see him manifesting immediately what that is. And noble be damned. He can be as noble. He can be noble, but nobility might just be him covering for
absolutely
the
yes
that he's got going on up here.
Yes,
and I don't have a problem with it getting sloppy and bloody and ugly early. He's not, you know, if he strikes Desdemona late in Act 3 or early in Act 4, and it's the first we see this. And I think that a man with a violence problem, with a hand problem, we've seen it before. It ain't the first time he smacks somebody. He's a man who answers shit with his fists. You know, he answers problems with his fists, and we will have seen that. We will have seen him, you know. And Desdemona mentions, she says, "You are fatal when your eyes roll so." And I don't know about rolling eyes. I think that's again an invention of Shakespeare's. She has seen that switch flipped.
Yes, she had to have.
She has seen him go into PTSD. She has seen him in the war flashback, if you will.
That's right.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Indeed. You know, I seen him, well, at least when I play him sometime, I see him, I don't see him just become crazed or violent when by the time he gets to Desdemona. He gets special with his men when they start fighting and he comes out with the sword. He didn't just come out playing it. Oh man, what y'all doing? He don't come out like that. He come out like, what? What's going on here? What the hell y'all doing? He comes out with a level of anger that is just like, come on, man, what's this mess? He starts there. I mean, for a minute, you know, he's telling them to put up their bright swords, but I don't think he's telling them that gently. Right. When men are in the middle of fighting, you can't just say, guys, you guys need to stop it. He needs some force when he's trying to break up that would-be fight at the very beginning when Desdemona's father shows up. Yes, I think that he is a man who done lost his, he's in the middle of losing his damn mind, because can you imagine being in a place, in a space, like let's call it Italy, and you're a black hero. Right. And so people know you, they see you, they celebrate you. But at the same time, you hear the damn whisperings. Why did he have to send Cassio to run interference for him? Why couldn't he march his black behind up in there himself if his father loved him, if he could go in there anytime?
Please pardon me, because he had a black behind. I'm hearing this.
Black behind? Oh,
yes, you did, and I'm so thrilled. It's really brilliant because I'm seeing more and more of the racist qualities in here. Of course, Iago is not going to die at the end. Everyone dies at the end of Shakespeare. Oh my God, I'm surprised Puck is not killed at the end of Midsummer Night's Dream. Everyone dies but Iago. Every villain is killed. Queen Gertrude dies. Every villain dies but Iago. Now, if we put this in the South in the 50s, and the African American is executed, but the real murderer, the Caucasian, is let off with jail time. We would call that racism. So I really see that here even stronger. Listening to what you're saying. Yes, of course he's going to be free, because maybe this really is a very strong parable of racism. Yes, that's also, if he has PTSD, and Keith, that's really brilliant. That's exactly right. What's it exacerbated with? The fact that he hears these whispers, that no matter how valiant he is, no matter how many wars he wins, he's still an outsider.
Yeah, he's old, he's black. You know, what he says, my grimed and black as my own face. That's talking to myself about my blackness and not really liking it. So if I have that going on, if I'm a soldier who's not been at war for a minute, he talks about having been at war for a minute. Of course, all of that kind of PTSD thing is going on. And then on top of that, you, for the first time, this for me is what makes me see why I go mad. If I am a man in a world, and I don't have a wife, I don't have children, I don't have my parents, I don't have a lineage, I don't have, because I was stolen from where I was stolen from. I've been around all these other folks all of my time, and now I finally meet a woman who marries me, who says we're going to have a family, who says we're going to have a legacy, who says we're going to be together, and then all of a sudden somebody tells me that this is not going to work, this is not going to happen, and I'm old as hell too. I mean, not that old men can't have children, but I'm old. I'm thinking that I can be with this woman, that she loves me, I love her, and we're going to have a family, a children, a lineage. And now I'm not going to have that?
Right.
I lose my damn mind.
You know, it's interesting you pick age also, because now we get.
He says he's old, so age is a part of it. You can't be a soldier forever.
By the Shakespearean standards, yes, he is definitely ready to retire from the service.
You're going to have to retire.
It's like Richard III saying, "But I am not made of sportive tricks," saying he has to be in war. What's left for Othello?
What are you going to retire to?
Yeah.
Who are you going to spend your end years with?
He's not a wealthy landowner. He's not going to sit on his great.
He's not a landowner, but he got to have something if he's been a soldier so long. He's been general.
He has to have something. Pension, whatever they give to the soldiers then, but he didn't have what he really wanted.
Yep.
And now he has a chance to get it. He's had his war. He's a warrior. Now he wants to be a husband and a father. And they're just not letting him.
Imagine somebody stealing that from you last minute.
Oh my God.
You see why the damn man lost his mind?
It seems like he comes from a world, as Deborah was saying, a world of violence, a world where might is right and where conflict is resolved by the sword. And then the one person he finds that is an alternative to that, to open up his softer side, his personal side, is Desdemona, whom he can regale with his gentler stories, his kinder stories, and be that warmer person with. But once the machinations start to go underway, and he's taken out of that comfort zone, out of that context, and he's brought back into the world of jealousy and rage and all of those stronger emotions, then that complexity of spirit, that gentleness goes by the wayside. He goes back to his what he knows, which is the violent. I don't know if you've heard the expression where if you're in a boxing match or if you're in a fight, that you can plan as much as you want to plan, but once you get punched in the face, all the plans go out the window. You go back to your instincts. I think it's the same thing. Once he gets punched in the face, all the subtlety that he learned in court, all the kindness and gentleness that he learns to behave with his wife goes out the window, and he goes back to his rage and wanting to answer things with violence. So, folks, go ahead. I'm sorry, Deborah.
I just said indeed. I was just thinking also what you've been saying about Iago and him not, him being the crazy man that he was. Depends on who's playing him. Excuse me. Depends on who's playing him. Some people play him as a straight up psychopath. So you don't need a reason to be crazy. You just are.
Right.
It's just a mental condition that you're born with. So it depends on who's playing him and what that looks like. Of course, all those wonderful things you said, Jay, about Iago and about the world and about how the world sees people of color and how, I even say in one of my lines in my play, I said, in the spirit of Iago still running rampant in the world.
Thank you. Yes, exactly right.
I do say that. I say that, and I was like, I'm not gonna say that, but I say that because I can see how. I'm not saying Shakespeare wrote a racist play. That's not what I'm saying, because I don't know that. I wasn't even there. But I am saying that thought of you getting away with all these crazy things that you just did, that is very present and still happening in the world.
See, it's funny when you say he didn't write a racist play. That's why I say Shakespeare's apology or Shakespeare's clairvoyance. I think he was writing an anti-racism play. He can't come out and say, honor Othello, honor Shylock, honor these outsiders. But what he can do is make them the heroes,
make you think about
make them wronged, And so now they must revenge. Okay, now they're bad. Now they have to die. But and the other people, the people within, the accepted people can go on with their lives because they'll die. So now the audience has this sort of smokescreen. Oh, good, that evil Moor was killed, that moneylender was killed. But in reality, what he's saying is, do you see what we are doing wrong, noble people? So that's why and I always say whoever Shakespeare is, he knew what the future was going to be for so many different kinds of walks of life. And his clever subterfuge was to say, okay, you're going to get killed and everyone's going to hate you, but you're the hero. And I just thought it's the perfect master plan on how to show anti-racism via racism.
It's a really interesting point, Jay, and needs to be more furtively, more deeply explored.
Yes.
The problem is that we take this 400-year-old play, we bring it to the present, and we do it with the tools that we have. We have on us the need to bring in an audience. We have the need for them to get it, to shorten it, to rehearse it in 2.5 to 3 weeks.
Sure.
So we default to all of the tropes, all of the things that Othello has become, as opposed to having the bravery to really look at it. That takes time. That takes time and attention and talent and great on everybody's part.
Yes.
Great to find that level of nuance in this play. If it's there, right? You're saying, I have this idea that Shakespeare was giving us this thing, right? Right now we have to have the support to go and find that thing, to show that thing, and that's never done. And what I get more often than not is the same old story about the crashing and burning of the black guy. I've had I don't need to see Iago make the monkey dance one more time.
Oh,
right?
Brilliant. Yes.
I don't need to see it.
Right. I agree.
All right, folks, we are coming up on our hour, so I think it's time for us to bring the conversation to an end. But I'm so happy we had a chance to get this discussion of Othello in the books tonight with our two fabulous guests, Keith Hamilton Cobb of American Moor, Debra Ann Byrd of Becoming Othello and the Harlem Shakespeare Festival, and of course, the lovely and talented Jay Michaels.
And you, my scholarly friend, Rodney Hakim.
A pleasure.
Absolutely.
So, this video will be posted shortly after our discussion. Will be posted on YouTube and on our Facebook channels. And for those of you who haven't seen it, you can go back and check out the New York Shakespeare Instagram and YouTube pages for the interviews that we had a while back with both Keith and with Debra, talking about their project in a little bit more depth. And with Jay as well, we had a wonderful chat with Jay about all the things that he is up to. Jay is expanding his online offerings, and he has a lot of exciting things in the works. Keith, Debra, Jay, I thank you all for joining us tonight and for lending us your insights into Othello, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Yes, thank you, Rodney.
Thank you very
Keith.
much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you all. Indeed. Bless you, gentlemen.
And thank you, Shakespeare, for 400 years later.
Whoever you are.
I need to talk about. All right, and I'll end the recording here.